The Rift War is over. Time has been restored. The sky is clear, but one question remains. What happens to Ekko? A boy from a future that no longer exists? Tony and Ekko stood on the Stark Tower roof at sunrise. The world around them was peaceful, but Ekko looked lost. He watched the sun rise over the horizon. If I don't belong to this timeline, Ekko asked, where do I go now? Tony smiled gently. Then we make a place for you. Ekko frowned, but I'm not from here. I'm just a visitor from the future. You are part of this team now, Tony said, putting a hand on Ekko's shoulder. And besides, I believe you have something to do here. You just don't know it yet. Over the next few days, Tony worked in his lab. Pepper left early that morning for a board meeting, leaving Tony and Ekko alone in the tower. Not building armor, but running diagnostics, pulling data streams, and creating a tomorrow code, a program that could integrate Ekko's time-stabilized DNA and memory waves into this reality. Not as a visitor, but as someone meant to exist. Nova assisted, flying around the room with tools and parts. And even JARVI contributed emotional analysis patterns to make sure Ekko could grow up safely. But to run the code, it needed an origin anchor, a moment of truth, where Ekko chose who he wanted to be. We need your help, Ekko, Tony said one day, to rewrite your origin story here, to make a home for you in our timeline. He took him to the old battle site where they fought Rift. Below them, New York bustled with life. The sun glinted off the windows of the Avengers Tower under construction. You saved the future, Ekko, Tony said. Now, what will you do with yours? Ekko looked at the stars, then back at Tony. I want to help people, he said, like you. Tony smiled, his eyes shining. Well, that makes things simple. They ran the code. A glowing spiral of data wrapped around Ekko, rewriting his resonance into the timeline. A beacon formed in the sky above them, his new starting point. Welcome to the world, kid, Tony whispered, pulling Ekko into a tight hug. Later that week, Tony drove through the streets of Brooklyn, making his way to a local school. Kids were playing on the field. One of them ran up to a teacher holding a small cube. Mr. Stark, the boy said, will you stay for the robotics demo? Wouldn't miss it, Tony grinned, ruffling the boy's hair. He watched as Ekko, older now, wearing glasses and holding a small hologram cube, joined the other students. Wow, Tony whispered, smiling. So this is it. He walked up to the group and turned on the cube. On it, a tiny Iron Man flew around, dodging asteroid after asteroid. It's a simulation, one of the girls said. Can I see? Sure, Ekko said, handing it to her. Let's show them how you can reprogram a neural net by overriding its vector matrix. As the kids huddled around the cube, discussing artificial intelligence, Tony watched them, a wide grin on his face. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Hey, Pepper, he said. Come look at this. He turned the screen towards the kids. They were so absorbed in the demo, they hadn't noticed him. Yeah, Pepper said softly. It's beautiful. The kids continued talking until the bell rang. They all lined up, waiting for their ride. So, one of the boys said, who do you think would win in a fight, Iron Man or Captain America? Iron Man, obviously, another kid said. He flies and shoots lasers. I think it's close, Ekko said. They're both really strong. Yeah, Tony said, stepping forward. But hey, if you guys want to see some real action, there's this great movie about a talking tree who gets revenge on some woodchoppers. Really keeps you on the edge of your seat. Totally awesome. The kids stared at him, then one of them burst out laughing. The others soon joined in. Even Ekko had to smile. Okay, kids, time to go, one of the teachers said. Let's go. As the bus pulled away, Tony waved. Bye, Mr. Stark, the kids shouted. Once they were gone, Tony turned to Pepper, a big grin on his face. How did I do? Pepper laughed, squeezing his arm. You were amazing. They walked side by side down the street. You know, she said, for a billionaire genius who builds suits of armor, you sure do have a knack for teaching. I had a good teacher, Tony replied. A talking tree. They stopped outside a small cafe. What do you think he'll do when he grows up? Pepper asked, sipping her coffee. Oh, I think he knows, Tony said, glancing back at the school. He just needs some time to find his way. A few weeks later, Tony sat in his workshop, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects. In front of him was a disassembled Iron Man suit. What do you think, Sparky? He asked. Do you think this is right? On the table next to him, a small AI construct flickered to life. It was a small version of Tony, only made of pure energy. It's a start, Spark said, floating around the room. But you need more power, more precision. If you want to rewrite the code in his mind, you'll need to reach his subconscious. Create a feeling, a memory. Like what? Tony asked. Something that represents home, Spark said. Tony thought for a moment. I think I have just the thing. He got to work, welding and wiring, hammering and shaping. He worked for hours, stopping every once in a while to check on Ekko. He was spending time with some of the other kids, laughing and playing. Finally, Tony finished his project. He stepped back to admire his work. He had built a small machine that looked like a rocket ship. There were wires coming out of it that connected to a console. It's a shortcut, Tony explained, to show him what it feels like to fly. The next day, Tony called the school. Hi, may I speak to Ekko, please? Sure, the teacher said. A moment later, Tony heard a familiar voice. Mr. Stark, what's up? Hey, Ekko. Do you want to come visit me in the workshop? I have a surprise for you. Sure, Ekko said. Be there in a few minutes. A few moments later, Tony heard the door open behind him. Close your eyes, he said. I want to show you something. Ekko did as he was told. Tony put a headset on him, then activated the machine. A jolt ran through Ekko, and when he opened his eyes, he was met with a sight that took his breath away. Wow, he whispered. The machine whirred and hummed, and the wires glowed brightly. Tony watched as Ekko reached out and touched the console. A smile spread across his face. This was perfect. It's beautiful, isn't it? Tony asked. Yeah, Ekko replied. It feels like... He paused, searching for the right word. It feels like home. Tony felt a lump form in his throat. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Well, Tony said, clearing his throat. If you're done here, I guess I should get back to work. Sure, Ekko said, still staring at the machine. Thanks, Mr. Stark. As Ekko left the workshop, Tony turned back to his work, a satisfied smile on his face. He had given Ekko a gift, a reminder of home. And in return, he had gained a new purpose, a reason to keep fighting. All because sometimes the future needs to change so the present can shine. Next series, Spider-Man. Shadow of the Signal Storm begins next. A new danger brews in New York, and it might be watching Peter even before he knows it.